In the last video, we saw that we can use math.random to get a random number between any two numbers, whether we want that to be a double or an int. We know that just using math.random gives me a random number between 0 and 1, not including 1, so really 0 and 0.9999. And we made a little program that actually spits out a bunch of random numbers. We figured out some math that we can do to actually make that, like I said, within the range of any two numbers. Now, that program wasn't the most interesting thing in the world, so let's use random numbers to do something kind of fun. Let's hit new class. I'm going to make this a graphics program, and we're going to call this RandomCircles. Based on the name of this program, what are we doing? We're going to make circles in some random way. Ooh. So you'll notice that this program is called RandomCircles with an S, which means we're going to be making multiple random circles. When I'm going to be doing something over and over again, I know that I'm going to need some sort of loop. And we're going to say we're going to make a fixed number of circles. So let's start with a for loop. The question is, how many circles do we want? Well, this program is called RandomCircles, so let's actually make it a random number of circles. I'm going to start with this. Let's do int num circles equals, and let's say I want a random number of circles between 50 and 250 circles. How would I actually do that with math.random? Well, let's think about it. We know that just saying math.random gives me a number that's between 0 and 0.9999. How many numbers are actually between 50 and 250? If you include both 50 and 250, it's actually exactly 201 distinct numbers in that range. So I'm going to multiply this by 201. And then don't I actually need to add kind of the bottom of the range to shift it up? So I'm going to add 50. Again, the way that we think about this is what I'm multiplying by is the number of possibilities in the range. How many numbers are between 50 and 250 is exactly 201 if you're including 250. And I think of the other number, this one that I'm adding on, as the shift. What is the lowest number in my range is 50. I want to shift my entire range up 50 so that it starts at 50. And then we can't forget, if I want this to be an int, right now this is a double, let's typecast it to an int. Technically don't need that space there. I just like to put it because I think it makes it a little more readable. Now we have our for loop. For int I equals 0, I is less than num circles. Oh, I can't spell. I plus plus. Now what am I doing over and over again is I'm creating a circle. So let's do G oval circle equals new G oval. We know that to make a G oval, don't I have to give it 4 numbers? And those 4 numbers mean the x coordinate of the top left corner, the y coordinate of the top left corner, the width, and the height of the circle, or the oval. It's really an oval. You guys have a test coming up, and I just want to remind you that if you forgot the order of those things or how many numbers you have to do to make a G oval or what they were, I just want to remind you that what can you do is you can raise your hand and ask. I'm never expecting you to memorize anything in this class, but just know it is x, y, width, height. So where should these circles go? Well, this program is called RandomCircles. Let's make them go somewhere random. So let's do this. I'm going to do int x. This is going to be my x coordinate. If I want my circles to appear on the screen, shouldn't this x coordinate really be kind of a random number between 0 and the width of the screen? So I'm going to do this. Int math.random times get width. Remember, get width lets me just get the width of the screen. And let's do the same thing with y. Int y equals int math.random times get height. And now I can go ahead and put these at x, y. For now, let's just do 100, 100. And just to see what this looks like, let's add circle and be done with this for now. So let's see. If I run this, oh, that looks kind of nice. You know, 100 isn't all that interesting either, though. This program is called Random Circles. What should I really make the width and the height be? Let's make those be random. Now, I don't want them to be random separate from each other since I want these to be circles. So let's do this. Let's say int diam for diameter equals, and let's make the diameter, let's make these circles range between maybe 10 and 150 diameter. So let's do int. How can I get a number between 10 and 150? How many possibilities are there between 10 and 150? Aren't there actually 141 numbers? So I'm going to do math.random times 141. And then I want to shift that range up by 10. And let's make this now be diam and diam, which of course stands for diameter. And let's see what this looks like. Ooh, look at that. It's kind of like bubbles almost. Now, there's one thing about this that I don't really love, and that's that some of the circles are actually going off the bottom of the screen and the right side of the screen here. This isn't great, right? We kind of want them to be all seen on the screen. Why is this happening? Well, when we choose a random x and y coordinate, we've said that that can be from 0 to the overall width or 0 to the overall height of the screen. If I have a circle that's drawn right at the width, remember that's the top left corner of the circle. So that means I'm starting the drawing here. That means the entire circle is going to be kind of over here. So don't I really want the x coordinate of my circle to be between 0 and the width of the screen kind of minus the width of the circle? So if I start drawing it here and it's this big, it'll just kind of just barely touch the side. And same thing with the y coordinate. I really want it to be from 0 to the height of the screen minus whatever the height of the circle is. And now we actually know that number since we made a variable for it. It's the diameter. So let's do this. And again, the parentheses here are really important. I'm going to put parentheses, get width minus diam, and get height minus diam. So again, all I'm doing is I'm decreasing the range that the x coordinate could be, kind of the top end of that random number. I'm shifting that down because I don't want to put the x coordinate too close to the edge. Let's compile this and let's run this one. And there we go. Now they're actually kind of all on my screen. Now, this is pretty good. I think this looks pretty nice, but we can make it better. What are some other things we can do with G-ovals? Can't I color them? Now, whenever we've done colors before with any of our graphics shapes, we've just used the set colors, color.pink, color.blue, color.green, color.cyan, right? But you actually can create a new color. We haven't actually talked about this in this class, but for most computers, they look at colors through something called the RGB color scale. What that means is that every color is made up of some amount of red, some amount of green, and some amount of blue. And specifically, that number of how much red, how much green, and how much blue is in my color can range between 0 and 255, including 255. If I want to make a new random color, I can just figure out how much red there should be in it, how much green, how much blue, and then I can make that color. So let's do this. Let's say int r, this is going to be the red, equals, how can I get a random number between 0 and 255, including 255? Well, I can do this. Int math.random times 256. Y times 256. Y times 256. Remember, math.random is 0 to 0.999. If I multiply by 256, that's 0 to 255.999. And if I typecast that to an int, I get rid of the decimal. So that's going to be 0 to 255. And we're going to do this for the green and the blue too. So int g equals int math.random times 256. You might be wondering, why am I typing the same line 3 times? And that's because I actually want each of these to be different random numbers. If I just said that I made r and then I said g equals r and b equals r, it's not like I get a new random number from that. I have to actually use math.random a different time. Cool. So then how do we make a new color? I can do this. Circle.setColor. Instead of color.blue or color.yellow, I'm going to do this. New color, R, G, B. All right, let's go and run this and see what it looks like with colors. I'm going to close out, let's compile, and let's run this. Ooh, that's kind of nice, kind of like colorful bubbles. I like this one. Now, what else can we do with graphics objects on our screen? We know that we can fill them in. Let's do circle.setFilled true. And let's compile this. And this looks pretty nice. It almost looks like kind of something you would have made in MS Paint when you were like 6 or 7. But one thing I don't like is that when the circles are filled in, you actually can't really see much of what's behind them. And we know there's actually a lot of circles being added to our screen right now. So maybe what I want is I want some of these circles to be filled in and kind of other ones to not be filled in. How can we actually do that with math.random? Well, in effect, really what we want is to kind of coin toss, and if it lands on heads, we want to fill it in, and if it lands on tails, we don't. We can mimic the idea of a coin toss using math.random with a little if statement. We think of a coin toss as being kind of a 50-50 chance. So let's do this. If math.random is less than 0.5, we know that goes from 0 to 0.999, so this should be about half of that. Then we're going to fill in this circle. So I can compile this and run it. And there we go. That looks pretty cool. There's actually one more thing we're going to do. When you make a new color, there's actually an optional fourth parameter that you can do. Right now, we're just giving it R, G, and B, but there's a fourth one called the opacity. And this is actually how see-through it is. If I make that opacity be 255, it's completely solid. And that's what it defaults to. If I make it 0, it's completely invisible. Let's make that random as well. So I'm going to do int opacity equals int math.random times 256. And then let's just put opacity as the last one here. And let's compile this and run it. And ooh, that looks pretty nice. I think that's pretty cool. One more thing, let's make there be a little dramatic effect. After adding every circle, we're just going to pause 10. And now you'll actually be able to see the circles kind of being added on one by one. Ooh, that's kind of nice. Almost like a little screensaver. I think that's pretty fun. In this next unit, we're going to cover a whole bunch of topics. One of the big ones is what kind of things in Java can you do mathematically? We've done some basic math at the surface level, but there's actually a lot more to do than just adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. And randomness is one of those things. We're going to see a lot more in the next bunch of examples, but this is where we're going to leave this for now. Enjoy your random circles program. Let's run it again. Let's see what it looks like. Ooh, this one's kind of nice. The great thing about this is you can keep running it until you get something you like. You can also, if you like more of them being filled in or less, you can always change this number to make this probability happen more often or less often.